Uh, what we're going to do then is we're going to get into the specific questions now. Bear with me because this is where the order will start. So Bill, once again, I'll ask you to go first for question number 1, and then starting with question number 2 and 3, we'll start to move around. You just got lucky and won the lottery, so you get to go first twice. So here's the first question for all candidates. And all of you have alluded to this in one way or another, which is, what is your assessment of our city's financial health, and what specific steps, if any, would you take within the first 90 days or so to improve it if you think it needs improving? So does that make sense to everybody? All of you have a chance to, do you understand that? We're good? Okay, Bill, you're up first, and please unmute yourself.
That would make good sense, yes.
Well, for some people, yes. Go ahead.
Well, I think the biggest challenge in front of us really is our financial health, and particularly as it refers to pension obligations. We have a pretty big pension debt that needs to be addressed. And unfortunately, there's no tricks. There's nothing that can get us out of that. We have to pay that down. So I think one of the things that I would look for is to start to pull together new sources of revenue. I've put together a small group of folks who are looking into some events that could bring in money to the city. I think that we also need to look for some efficiencies, but my observation is the city is working about as efficiently as it can. I can't see us, cutting staff or anything like that unless we want to cut services, and I don't want to do that. We need to look for reinventing the benefit systems for the employees. I think there are a couple of ways to do that. One is to look into becoming a charter city. I think that would help us to get a better benefit package for folks. There's another way would be to become a safety district where we would work with other cities on the Hill to have a police force that's shared both in cost and in service. So I think I would begin in the first 90 days looking at those things. I think that's a way to get the best bang for the buck early on.
Okay, great, thank you. Jim, you're up next.
Yeah,
so you need a repeat of the question, you're okay?
I think I understand it.
Okay, very good.
So, the state of the city's finances, I think we could probably look to the state auditor's report. And we'll see that, the overall state of our finances is relatively healthy. The state auditor says that we're at low risk relatively from a fiscal standpoint, rates us green in that regard. But that's not to say that we aren't without our problems. And if you dig deeper into that report, you find that the most significant financial issue that we have facing us is future pension obligations, which they rate us as high risk on. So it's very clear to me that of the challenges fiscally that we have to addressing our pension obligations is the most pressing, and the one that our city council should be putting their attention to first. I'm very encouraged by the efforts of the Pension Ad Hoc Committee. The report that they released on Friday, I think, includes a number of options that I think reflect my perspective on the issue. I think we need to be paying 100% of the normal cost using a discount rate that accurately reflects the return that we can expect CalPERS to get. I believe we need to set a target funding level for our pension UAL, and we need to be making plans to try to achieve that. There are other options on the menu there that the committee has considered that I probably wouldn't want to pursue, including things like participating in the Fresh Start program, which is a CalPERS program that would in my view, imperil our cash flow, would constrain our flexibility and increase the likelihood of insolvency. But I think the report is a great start. I think the next city council is well positioned to tackle this problem. And I think that's the right place to go. Thanks.
Okay, great. Dawn?
Great. Well, thank you. You know, Michael, I would focus on a three-pronged approach. My first step would be to finish the city's strategic long-term plan, to make sure we've identified what the priorities and goals are, to make sure that we're deploying resources in the right place. So in order to run an organization well, you've got to make sure you're clear on your priorities and have the right resource alignment. I would also then, the second prong would be reducing expenses, and the third would be around raising revenues, particularly around non-tax. So let's talk about those. We've talked about the long-term plan. You know, it's really important to make sure that when you've got limited staff and limited time and limited money, that's all being applied to the priority issues that the city's facing. And that's something I look forward to working with the residents and staff to finish the work that was already started, but hadn't quite gone to that final step. Regarding reducing expenses, I agree with Bill that at some point you start to reach diminishing returns. I don't think we're quite there yet. I think we need to complete the operational reviews and figure out where there are efficiency opportunities to modernize and automate where it's practical, and also to look at where it makes sense to contract out services or enter into a broader shared service with our neighboring cities. There's opportunities, companies do that all the time, and that's something that it's different thinking for the government sector, but a place where we can have some opportunities. And I'm glad that both Bill and Jim talked about the need to better manage pensions. As somebody who was on the pension ad hoc committee, I completely agree with that. I'm not going to belabor that point since they both addressed that. Simultaneously, I would create a revenue ad hoc committee to look at new revenue opportunities. You bring together a group that includes residents and experts. There are a lot of creative ideas out there. I hear them when I'm going out door to door and talking to people. And we need a more comprehensive and structured approach than we've had to date. And what this would look like is you'd have a couple of town halls. You'd invite residents to throw in their ideas. You could have a survey, you could have a dedicated email address. And then the committee's job would be to evaluate those relative to a set of criteria to identify what makes sense and what doesn't make sense for moving forward. You know, one of the opportunities out there that I know is currently in the works is the work that's being done by the task force, who's looking at the golf club and the tennis club to see if there's a new service offering, maybe doing another pool or another gym to meet residents' needs. So my feeling is if we do the strategic plan, we look at reducing costs and increasing revenues, then we'll know where we stand and what kind of budget gap exists. And it's then time for a conversation, continuing conversation with residents around, this is what we have, this is where we are. How does the residents want to move forward?
Great. Thank you very much. Dane, thank you for your patience. It's your turn.
All right. So what I hear you saying is, what can we do for the first 90 days to try to attack our fiscal problems? And I agree with a lot of what's already been said. What I think that I got out of the pension ad hoc committee report, I agree with almost all of what they suggested, which was clearly make a more simpler budget, look at efficiencies. Can we use, if we get surplus, can we use some of that surplus to pay down some of those problems? So clearly, if the pension ad hoc committee report has just been published, can we look at it, study it, and say, what are the doable items in the 1 through 6 list? I don't think increasing taxes is doable, and certainly not doable in the first 90 days. And I don't suggest that. I think that creates more problems that we don't really want to get into. But certainly the other 5 suggestions, and looking at those very seriously. I absolutely agree with Dawn about, can we look at decreasing expenses? I have heard previous city council people discuss, we're almost at the bone, cut to the bone. But I think, we need to can we relook at it? Because apparently from 2013 to 2018, they added many more full-time employees that used to actually be subcontracted out. And then they became pensionable. So could we start the ball rolling and look at that in the first 90 days? Another thing we could do is in terms of revenue. Do you know about the beach club or the golf club, some of the concessionaires? So some of them are going to be coming up for renewal. And can we maximize more value to some of those clubs that we have? They're basically nonprofit except for the stables. But that can we maximize some of that? I know the beach club says that they're going to be doing more things to be more attractive. Sometimes they look kind of empty. So what can we do with that whole 3-tier suggestion? I think overall, we need to prioritize in the first 90 days, which problems do we want to attack first? So I agree with Don. We do need to prioritize things because there's no easy answer right away in the first 90 days.
Thank you, Dave.
I don't know how long I've been talking because there's no
You've been talking for
timer.
1 minute and 45 seconds.
Okay, all right, I'll stop there.
Thank
Can
you
I have
very
a timer? Okay.
Yeah, I'm hoping you can see the timer on John's screen.